Hello everybody. Welcome to my Halloween live stream where I'm going to tell some spooky stories. So I hope everybody's having a good day, a good Halloween. It's fall weather. It's rainy out there tonight for me. And I don't have any scary music to play in the background, but we'll pretend that that's going on. Let me just refresh over here so I can read any questions that come up. All right. I've got my candlelight over here. Pay no attention to the light over there. Oh, what's going on over here? We got a zombie over here in the corner. Okay. We're doing this by candlelight tonight, so we'll wait a couple more minutes for everyone to get here, and we'll start the stories. The stories I'm going to tell tonight are all what I would consider creepy or spooky. They're all true stories that I've experienced in my life. So I've told them before. If you guys watched my last Halloween live stream, and so if you've already heard them, then it's just going to be the same thing. But sorry, nothing else has really happened since then. So these are my spooky stories to tell you guys. Let's see, we have a bunch of happy Halloweens here. You know, the trick-or-treaters usually come pretty early these days, so even when it's not dark out, they start to come around, and Indy the pup will bark if anyone is here. So I got him upstairs in the bedroom. Do I believe in the paranormal? Well, I'm about to tell you guys some stories that I have experienced. Whether I believe or not, I think I have a little bit different beliefs as far as the paranormal goes. Just because we can't explain something, I don't think it's automatically a ghost or a spirit. But I'm going to tell you some of the things that I have experienced tonight. Well, today. It's still daytime over here. Okay, so I'm going to start with, so some of these aren't really scary. They're kind of weird, maybe a little creepy. I'll start with the ones that aren't so creepy. I'll save the best one. So here we go. Aliens 2. I was thinking about doing the alien stories, but I don't know. Maybe they're kind of creepy, so maybe. Actually, I have a couple. Okay, we'll throw some of those in there as well. All right, here we go. We're going to get started. It is 4:03 p.m. on the Eastern Coast. So, is the connection good? Can you guys hear me okay? It's not stopping and going. Hopefully I have everybody here. The Wi-Fi is going good. Okay, that's why I asked, because I saw it skip on my computer. No, we're just starting, Crystal. Welcome to the show. We're gonna do by candlelight. We're gonna do some spooky stories. So let's see. The first one. All right, that takes me back to about 2009. I was living in Rochester, New York. That's about an hour from where I live now. I had an apartment there. I lived there with my, at the time, girlfriend, and her family lived where I live now, in the city that I live now, Syracuse, New York. And we would go there and visit. And I remember going through their neighborhood one summer, and there was a house that had a sofa chair for sale for only $20 right in the yard. So I decided to stop. And I said, I was driving, and she got out, and she went and looked at it, and she said, yeah, it looks like a nice chair. It's only $20. I'm like, all right, here. So I gave her $20. I go run that up, knock on the door, and give them $20. Well, the garage was open. So she walked through the garage, and there was a screen patio on the back. She said there was a a really old lady out there, and she said, "Well, we want to buy your chair. Here's $20." And she said, "Thank you." So we took that chair, put it in my vehicle, brought it home, and that was my new chair. Well, about a year later, I ended up moving back to Syracuse area. I stayed at my brother's house for a little bit until I found my own place. I wasn't sure if I wanted to rent or own at the time. And I decided I wanted to start looking for houses. And I looked at about 20 different houses. I was very picky, but the best house that I found for the cheapest price in the best area happened to be the house that I'm living in right now, which also happens to be the same house that I bought that chair from. And that chair is sitting right over there right now. It came back to the house about a year and a half later, not knowing at the time that I was going to buy the house. And I thought that was pretty creepy. So that's the first story. You guys want to see the chair? It's right there. There it is. Did everybody hear that okay? There was no glitches. I don't have to redo it. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right. I don't know if anybody was... I don't know if there's any other stories behind that chair. I just know that that chair needed to be back in this house. And I do hear things in this house pretty often, and I don't think anything of it. And when I first moved here, I experienced a few different things, and I happen to know from the neighbors that the couple that lived here, they lived here the entire time that they owned the house. They were a very old couple, and they both died here. So there is that. I'm sitting in the basement right now. I am not afraid of my house in any way. I do hear footsteps. Like the other night, for instance, I heard footsteps. There was nobody upstairs. Indy was down with me. He was laying down. He wasn't even scratching or anything. And I heard boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, what? But I hear that quite often. And I rented this house out for about a year. About a year and a half ago, I moved out and I rented the house out. And the tenant messaged me at one point and said, "This is a really, really weird question, but have you ever heard strange things in the house, like footsteps coming up and down the stairs and stuff like that when nobody's in the house?" And yes, I have. So anyway, do I think it's haunted? I don't know. I'm very skeptical, and we'll just, you know, I feel like I'm ruining the story by telling you what I really believe. So let's go to the next story. Vegan Makeup Shirt says, "Chris not sleeping over." Well, whatever it is, if there is a presence at the house, then I think that they're okay with me, because I've lived here for almost 9 years, and I can say that nothing. I mean, I'll turn a light on and it'll go right back off, and I'll turn it right back on. I'll be like, "Stay on, light," and nothing ever happens. So the next story would be, okay, so after I moved in this house, about, I don't know, maybe, you know, I don't even remember. It's about 3 to 6 months after I moved in. I went down where I am now, but in the other room across from where I am right now is the other side. This is the furnished part of the basement. The other side is not. It's all like cellar, wash machine, dryer, furnace. And I was down there doing laundry, and I'm looking at the furnace, checking it out, and I look over in the corner. What's over there in the corner behind the furnace? What is that? I pull it out. It was an old painting, a picture of a little boy, probably from the late 1800s, early 1900s. He was standing next to a chair. And you know those pictures where they're just staring, they're not smiling, they're just staring. And I noticed that wherever you went, it looked like he was staring at you. You could go anywhere in the room and it would look like he was staring at you. And I decided, just for my own amusement. I named him. Does anybody remember what I named him from the last year when I told the same story? I would always blame, because I have I have an imagination, and I love horror, and I love being scared ever since I was a little kid. And I would always, whenever I would hear things like boom, 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 the walking around upstairs or anything like that, I would blame it on him. I'm like, oh, he came back out of the picture and he's running around causing mischief in my house. And I named him Jacob. So I blame everything on poor little Jacob. Here's the painting. That's Jacob. I don't know how old this painting is, but it was wedged behind the furnace. So, look at his eyes. Look at him. I know you see a reflection there, but this is Jacob. It's a very old, as you can see, an old painting. I did take it apart at one time, hoping that they hid some money inside, but there was nothing, to my disappointment. But that's Jacob. Okay, Sage. I welcome the ghost. I want to see more proof. Every time something happens, I'm like, come on out, show yourself. I must see. So that's my second story. Smudge it. I always see Indy looking at something that's not there. He'll be like, huh? And his ears will go, whoosh. Yes, he does that quite often. Let's see, what else can I tell? Okay, so I got to throw some other stories in there that I didn't plan. Okay, so the alien stories. So I have a weird experience with that, and I don't even know if it's alien or extraterrestrial or just some weird thing that happened. I wasn't going to tell this story, but why not? When I was very young, I know I just moved into the house that I grew up in. I lived in one other house when I was growing up, and I moved way back in the end of 1979. So from 1980 on, I lived in the house that I grew up in. So I was about 4 or 5 at the time. And I remember going to sleep on my bunk bed, on the top bunk. My little brother, who was 2.5 years younger than me, was on the bottom bunk. And I remember down the hallway, specifically hearing my parents in the dining room talking. It was a very comfortable feeling because I could hear them talking. The door was open, it was dark in the room, and light was coming in. And I started to doze off, and I could hear them talking. Until I couldn't hear it anymore because I was falling asleep. And then it was very weird because I couldn't move, and I was laying on my back on a cold sheet of thin metal that was floating, hovering, almost like a reverse magnet above the ground. And there were people, tall people on the side of me. It was a purplish, grayish tint with the lighting around where we were. Nothing looked familiar. And these people, they looked like what people have gone and described what aliens look like. The big eyes and the gray skin and the tall, skinny, hairless heads. But remember, this was back in 1980, and I had never, at that point in my life, ever seen any kind of alien movie or heard anything about aliens or any of this stuff. And anyways, we ended up in this like almost like a cul-de-sac of a room. And then they had this needle that they put in me, like down in my torso. And I couldn't move and I couldn't feel it. And it was weird. And the one thing that was weird, because I have a very, very, very good memory of I can recollect so many things in my life. And this was one thing that, you know, I can tell when I'm having a dream and when I'm not. This one, I couldn't tell if it was a dream or if it wasn't a dream. And this happened like 3 or 4 times in my life. And this is before I had ever seen any alien movies or anything like that. Again, I was only 4 or 5 years old. So there's one thing that, and then as I got older, I started seeing all these movies and documentaries and like sightings, and these are the same stories that these people were telling. So what is the significance here? And this is at the expense of me sounding crazy, but this is true. This really happened, and that's my story with that. Now, the other thing that is really, really strange is my dad. My dad's in his 70s, and last summer. Okay, so my you all probably, well, not you all, but some of you watch my channel, and you know that I have a niece, Katie. She's 3 years old, and now that she's getting older, my mom sometimes goes over to my brother's house, which is in the same town that my parents live, and she'll go over there and watch Katie, and she'll spend the night sometimes. My dad is a character of habit, so he always does the same things, and he's got some weird things that he does. I mean, he'll drink a beer every night, but he'll mix it with Pepsi, which is weird, but that's what he does. He drinks one beer and mixes it with Pepsi. And I remember going over to my parents' house last summer. You know, time is escaping. It might have been the summer before that. Anyway, I walked in and the door was not locked. So that was the first indicator that something was off, because it's usually locked. But it was also not too late. My mom wasn't there, and all the lights were on in the house. My dad never does that. He turns all the lights off when he's not in a room. But they were all on, and I walked upstairs, and I saw his glass and a can of Pepsi. And it was open but full. And then his can of beer that was open but full. And this is, I've never seen this. And then the back sliding door, which is always locked, was open. And then I looked down on the floor and I saw his glasses and a pool of blood. And then I started to get really worried. I went down to his bedroom and I opened the door and I looked in, and he was laying on the bed. I just looked. I wanted to see if he was breathing. And I called my mom, and like, Mom would, you know what? She's like, you know, go in there and wake him up. I saw that he was breathing, everything was fine. So I left him alone. And the next day, I guess he woke up and he took a shower and he realized there was blood on the back of his head. He's like, what's this? He did not recall anything. He said he was watching TV, and then he just woke up the next morning. And then he showed me on his arm, right here, this black and blue mark. There was a big circle and a little circle. And on the other arm, the exact same marking opposite. A little circle and a big circle. I took pictures of this on my phone, and I was convinced that it was something extraterrestrial. I mean, I looked it up and I said alien markings on skin, and I saw all the same stuff. So this happened to him twice, and both times nobody was home but him. In the same house that I experienced 30 some years, 40 years ago almost, the same thing that I told. So those are my alien stories. I don't know if it's aliens. I don't know what it is, but it's unidentified. I don't know. I don't know how to quantify that. It could be anything. Do I still have everyone here? I just want to keep checking. How is the connection? The truth is out there. All right, I guess everything's good, so we will move on to the next story. I didn't mean to blow that out, by the way. I meant to just stoke the flames. Let's light it back up. There we go. Unintentional. All right, so let me think which one, because I'm saving the best for last. What else can happen here? Well, this is another little tiny thing that, like when I always try to say, when somebody says, oh, that's a ghost or that's a spirit, I always try to say, well, just because we can't explain it doesn't necessarily mean it's a ghost. I mean, isn't it more plausible that maybe it's another dimension that we just can't comprehend, we can't fathom? Maybe it's time travel, maybe it's extraterrestrial life. But yeah, all that stuff would be cool, because I am a huge fan of, I've always loved, the unexplained and spooky, creepy things going on and stuff like that. Does everybody know my, this one's kind of funny though. This one's not really a horror story, it's my experience with my first real horror movie. And I know I've told this one several times, but why don't I just throw it in there? When I was young, again, living in that house with my younger brother, I was looking at the TV guide and I said, Mom, I want to watch this movie. And she's like, what is it? And I'm like, it's Children of the Corn. And she said, no, you cannot watch that. I'm like, please. I was that brat. I was like, please, please, please. And she's like, no, Chris, you're not watching that. It's not for little boys to watch. And I'm like, she's like, you're going to be scared. I'm like, no, I won't. And she's like, I'm like, look, Mom, it says it's on tonight at 4 a.m. And she's like, all right, if you want to watch it at 4 a.m., you can watch it at 4 a.m. And I didn't understand sarcasm when I was 6 years old, so I went to bed and I took my wind-up alarm clock and I turned it and wound it up to 4 a.m., 3:50 to be precise. And when that time came around, I got up and I grabbed my blanket and then I went over to my brother, who is 2.5 years younger than me, and I said, Pat, wake up. We're going to go watch Children of the Corn. So he gets up and we go downstairs and we start watching Children of the Corn. Not long after, maybe 10 minutes, my mom comes down the stairs and she peeks her head through the opening and says, what are you guys doing? What time is it? I'm like, we're watching Children of the Corn. It's 4 a.m. Blew it out again. And she raced down there and turned that TV off and sent us right to bed. She loves telling that story now. And I never watched Children of the Corn again until about 5 years ago. And when I watched it and I saw the first 10 minutes, I'm like, whoa. I can't believe I watched that back in 1982 or 1983. That's crazy. If you guys haven't seen Children of the Corn, go check it out. So, Stephen King. That was kind of a funny story, not really creepy, but as you can see, I've always been a horror fan. Children of the Corn was the first one. The Hand, the one with Michael Caine. I used to like to scare my brother with that. And the first movie I was allowed to watch was Nightmare on Elm Street. Against my parents' wishes, my grandfather kind of convinced them, and I was able to watch it, and I was like, what did I just do to myself? Because I was spending the night over at my grandfather's house, and I had to go to bed. And I'm like, wow, Freddy only kills kids, and he does it at night when they dream. And I'm like, I have to go to sleep, and I'm a kid. I am so screwed here. And I was pretty scared. And anyway, on to the next story. So this is what I'm talking about as far as, like, I have no explanation for this. This isn't really that scary, but when I first moved into this house, I had all my stuff, like, this is when I first moved in, everything was just in, disorder. All of my stuff I just threw in different rooms as I was moving in. So this is literally the first week I moved here. And I had my tool chest, and it was sitting on top of a bunch of other stuff in the kitchen. And I was in the living room looking like I was facing the kitchen, and the toolbox, the top of the toolbox, how some of those toolboxes have little containers within the lid where you can put like ratchet pieces and screws and bolts and stuff like that. Well, they were in there, so it's kind of heavy. And as I'm looking at this, it just flips right open, doom, 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 doom. And I'm like, You know, usually when somebody says some kind of like extraterrestrial or supernatural thing goes on, I try to think logically of all the scientific explanations. And right there was no, um, I had nothing. Physics did not explain what just happened, and I witnessed it. And I didn't know what to think of that. And of course it happened. What am I going to do? I didn't get it on film. I wouldn't believe myself if I said it. I'm that skeptical, but I watched it happen. So that was kind of weird. And okay, let me think. I want to say the last one, but I'm trying to think if there's one that I could say before that. There is when I was 18. This is after I graduated high school. It was September, so school had just started again. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the first time in my life that I don't have to go back to school because I already graduated. And I was like, yes, I don't have to go back to school. And I didn't go to college until a few years later. So I was taking some time off. And it was late at night, you know, around maybe midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I called my friends. They pull up in their car. You know, this is, you know, the time when we first, you know, have cars and we first start driving. And they came out to my house and they're like throwing stones at my window. They're like, Chris, you got to come out here. I'm like, what? This is before cell phones too, so they couldn't call me. They had to go to my window and throw pebbles. They're like, Chris, something crazy just happened up at the park. And there's this park up where I grew up. I filmed a bunch of vegan zombie videos there because the wooded area is just ridiculously amazing. And they said that they witnessed, I don't know, I only know what I remember. I don't know what they witnessed before this. They witnessed some weird occurrence. I don't know why they were going up there in the first place, but it was pretty close to my one friend's house. So they went up there, and this is completely at nighttime. So you go down this like almost like a really long driveway into like this parking thing of a wooded area with a pond, and then a wooded hills with a big pavilion and stuff like that. I actually went to daycare there when I was a little kid. So they went up there and they witnessed this creepy guy, this really big guy that had like like one of those bags of shoes, like where you could put shoes in, and he set it on a picnic table under the pavilion. And then I guess what he did was, not knowing anybody was there or they were watching, he took all his clothes off and changed all his clothes right there and then into all black or something like that, and then got in his car and started to take off. And that's when they came and got me to tell me what was going on. And I went up there with them. Now this is where it gets foggy because it was pretty crazy. They said, okay, so we knew he was up there, so we parked our car a couple streets over and then started walking through the wooded area and the tennis court to get there. And we were running through the moonlight. Again, no flashlights, no cell phones to light our way. And as we were running on the trail, this was pretty scary. We came face to face with, I don't know if it was him or someone else, but there was a guy that was crouched down that we almost ran into, and he made this scariest sound and stood up. And we just did a 180 and ran as fast as we could the other way. But our curiosity was more powerful than us taking off. So we ran until we knew he wasn't behind us, and then we still went up to the pavilion. And in that bag was filled with women's shoes, all the same size, but only one shoe of each pair. And I don't know why or how or any of the other questions that I want to ask. We just had all these immediate, super scary ideas go through our head of what they could be. Was this a serial killer? What, we didn't know what the heck this was, and we left it like that. And we went and checked the next day, and they were gone. And I don't know if he came back or somebody picked them up. I don't know what the story was, but that's kind of weird. And again, I was only 18. Wasn't sure what was going on or what to do. I didn't take the shoes and sell them or give them away. And yes, I was vegan back then too. All those years. And look I'm not wasting away. It was only one shoe of each one, and they weren't ours. I didn't take them. Let's see. Is there one more that I can tell before we start the last one? Let's see what time it is. It's been a half an hour. Okay. Well, I guess I'll start with the last one. All right. So this is, by the way, I think sleep paralysis happened to me a few times, but I'm not certain if it was. That is by far the scariest thing that can happen to somebody. If you've had it happen to you, you know what I'm talking about. And you can't even, I don't, okay, I'll tell that story. See, I know all the dates and everything, so this is the first time anything happened. It was the 4th of July of 1997. I was with my friend and his girlfriend, and I remember he owned a 68 Chevelle that he worked on, and we drove to Buffalo from Syracuse, which is almost a 3-hour drive. His girlfriend at the time, her mother lived in Buffalo, and for whatever reason we went out there on the 4th of July to go skateboarding in Canada. So we crossed the border and we went skateboarding. We came back and we spent the night at her mother's house. Now before we went there, we met her mother earlier, and my friend was playing with some of like the trinkets in the living room, and they were all these weird things, like these little drums and all kinds of things. And I took a video of it. It's all on video. And my his girlfriend said, I wouldn't play with those if I were you. And he's like, why? What's going to happen? Is it like am I going to get cursed? And she's like, I guess her mother practiced witchcraft or whatever. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but that's just, setting the tone of the story of what was in the house and stuff like that. Now, when we went to bed, I'm kind of weird in a way where they took a bedroom upstairs, and this is a very old house, by the way, and very tall windows with the moonlight shining in. I'm just kind of also painting a picture. They said I could sleep on the couch, but I can't sleep on couches, so I'd rather sleep on a hardwood floor than a couch. That's what's weird about me. So I slept on the hardwood floor, and I started going to sleep. And what I was looking at as I was going to sleep was the fireplace. Now, the fireplace had these 2 iron owls for a wood holder, and above that there was a pentagram with trinkets hanging from it. And I remember going to sleep, hearing them talk, not much different than I said earlier with my parents when I was a little kid. And everything, kind of tuned out. And I didn't even realize I had fallen asleep, but I did. And I woke up immediately, wide awake. My eyes were wide open, but I had a really weird feeling that there was somebody behind me watching me. And I was trying to gather the courage to turn around and either catch somebody or see nobody there. And if I did catch somebody, what was I going to say? And I just finally said, okay, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to turn around. And as soon as I went to turn around, I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move. And there was the scariest feeling. It was pure fear. I can't even describe. It's like, I've been afraid, several times in my life, but nothing like this. This brought your psyche down to like, you were a little kid and you just wanted to jump in your parents' bed and be like, Mom, Dad. Like, it was pure terror, pure fear. And there was a weird pulse vibe going through me. It was like, and it was going through my chest and through my head. And I felt like there was like a presence whispering to me, like from above, just like right above my ear, just like pure evil. And it felt like it was going on forever until I finally was able to move my pinky. And as soon as I moved my pinky, I could move, and I sat up and I looked around, and I wanted to run up and tell my friend and be like, oh my God, oh my God. But then I realized, everybody's going to think I'm crazy. Nobody's going to believe this. This is pretty freaking crazy. I wouldn't believe it myself, but I know what just happened, and I don't know what to do. This is crazy. I feel like I was just being possessed, and like, I don't know how I was even able to do this, but I decided to try to go back to sleep. And as soon as I laid my head down, instantly I was paralyzed again. Now that is my only, later on in life I learned about sleep paralysis, and I'm like, this has to be it. But that is my only thing. If it was sleep paralysis, how did I, come out of it and everything, and, sit up for a few minutes, and then immediately as I laid down, it happened again. That's the only discrepancy there, which I don't know. So anyways, it happened again, but this time was only for a few seconds. And since then it has happened probably less than 10 times in my life. And it hasn't happened in about 10 or 15 years now. So, it's incredibly scary. The other thing is that I just remembered, another thing that is maybe similar to this, very powerful too. Your mind is very powerful. I remember when I lived, I was 19 and I moved out on my own with my friends to Sarasota, Florida. And I lived there in an apartment with my friend and one other roommate that we met down there. And I remember one day, it was in the middle of the day, I was taking a nap after work, and I was the only one home. And so the thing about me is, if I don't sleep on my stomach or my side, sometimes I either stop breathing, sleep apnea, or I sleep with my eyes open to the point where people think that I'm awake. So I try my hardest not to sleep on my back. But I had fallen asleep kind of on my back side, side back, and I had just like this little mirror by the side of the bed, and I must have fallen asleep with my eyes open, and I could see myself sleep. And I realized that I could see myself, and I don't know what was going on with the dream state or whatever, but I was sound asleep watching myself, and I was trying to move or anything, and I couldn't move. I was sleeping, and I could hear music in the kitchen, and I could hear my roommates in the kitchen making food and stuff, and I'm trying to hopefully they come in the room and say something to me and wake me up. So as this went on, as I'm watching myself, I was finally able to wake up. And as soon as I woke up, I realized there was nobody in the house but me. There was no music. Nobody was there. It was just me. So that was kind of creepy. And I think we can go on to the final story. Let me look at some of these questions here. Okay. The final story is probably the craziest one that I have, witnessed, experienced. Completely true. Okay, so it was when I decided to go to college. I was that person that I didn't go right after high school. I needed to, experience a little bit of the world, and I did. I went to Florida, I lived on my own, and then I came home. I did a few different things, and then I realized I want to learn so much, and I want to go to college. And I decided I wanted to go to college, and it was during the summer. So my first semester in college was actually a summer class. And it was early in the morning. I think it was July 1998. I believe it was 1998. And I had an 8 o'clock class, and I went with one of my best friends also took the same classes, so we carpooled. And the school that I went to was about 45 minutes from my parents' house where I was living at the time when I moved back from Florida. And it was my friend's turn to drive. Now, he's always on his time, so sometimes he's late, and I'm very punctual. I'm that kid I was always that kid in high school. I actually had perfect attendance throughout high school. I never missed a day. And I wanted the same for college. I had to be there on time. I didn't like to walk in late or anything like that. So anyway, so he gets there a little bit late, and I get in the car, and I'm like, come on, let's go, let's go. It's about 7:15 in the morning, and it's a nice summer morning. And we go from the really small town that I'm from, we go the back roads, and we're going up this road called Salt Springs Road. And at this time in the morning, the cornfields were growing tall, and there was a nice, big, thick mist coming out of the cornfield into the road on the ground that we were driving through as we were speeding up the winding roads to go to school. And as we came around this one corner, out of the cornfields, this girl, probably 13, 14 years old, wearing overalls, long hair, runs out in front of us. Just as my buddy swerves and almost hits her, but doesn't, and we pass her, and I look back, and I'm like, oh my God, like, what's going on there? And we kept going, and to this day, I regret that. I really wish we stopped. We were going really fast, and we were trying to get to school, and I remember at the time, again, this is before internet, how it is now, no cell phones, nothing like that, no social media, so it did kind of get to me that, because I didn't know why this girl would be out in the middle of nowhere, coming out of the cornfield like that, so I remember going and reading the newspaper for the next week. Was anybody missing? Was anybody kidnapped? Was anybody found? Like anything, nothing. There was nothing at all. But there was something weird about her. Something my buddy saw and I saw, and I just kind of passed it off as, we were just going really fast, and I never spoke about it again until about 10 years later. 10 years later, I'm living in Washington, D.C. area. I had a job there as an investigator, and I was hanging out there with some of my friends. Ironically, they were friends from up here that ended up living down there, and we were all hanging out at my apartment down there in Arlington. And they were telling some ghost stories. And my one friend told a story that sparked the memory of what I saw that day, that I never spoke of until then. And I decided to tell them the story, but include all the details that I left out when I just told you the story. So I told them the whole story, how it was. And the one thing that I, discounted as, we're going too fast, which totally would not be the case unless I was in like a rocket, was the fact that when we passed her, she didn't have a face. There was no face. It was blank. No face at all. I don't know why. I think I was in shock that somebody ran out in front of us. Maybe I was in shock that we were late for school and we almost hit this girl. I don't know, but she did not have a face. And that's when my friend, who was there as well, said, wait a minute, let me guess. What road were you guys, did you see this on? And she said, was it Salt Springs Road? And I said, how did you know that? And she said her grandfather told her stories of a girl that was in a horrible car accident like 45, 55 years ago. And people have said to have seen her on that road. I don't know if it coincides with the urban legend where somebody picked her up and then by the end of the road she's not in the car anymore. People have gotten accidents in the road. My brother had a friend that was killed on the road. But anyway, that is by far the craziest thing that I witnessed. And now, whenever I visit my parents, there's several ways to get to my parents' house. There's that way, and there's several other different routes that I can take. And I always take that route because I want to see her again. And I want to pull over and get out of the car. I regret not stopping now. But at the time, I had no idea of what this was going to be. So, I hope you guys liked my creepy stories. and hopefully there will be many more as time goes by, and I can tell more next year, and we can have a whole discussion live. But anyway, have a great Halloween. Be safe. Watch out for zombies. I'll see you guys soon.